Hi, I'm back. Welcome. This is my first lecture in this small lecture series. Professor Fazio from Middlesex County College, and this is ESL085. And this is a lecture for the March 5th class that we are not having tomorrow because of spring break. So this little bit is about the plagiarism exercise. A lot of people were really upset because they felt like I gave you this assignment or this activity, but I didn't really give you a lot of directions. And that may be true. However, one of the things that I have discovered since I've become an ESL teacher is that I can't just give you the answer to everything. I have to let you, as a student, look at the assignments that I give you, read the directions, try to understand them, discuss the assignment with each other. And in this way, in this process, you get to practice your English language. A lot of you don't get the opportunity to speak English except when you're in school. So part of my plan is, while I let you flounder and try to figure out how to do something, is I'm forcing you to practice your language. So when I was in teacher training school, one of the books I read is, why don't you just tell us the answer? And it's a text about why it's important for students to struggle. So without further ado, let's start talking about the plagiarism exercise because we are going to be doing a survey activity this week, and I want you to understand what the point is. So I gave you this plagiarism exercise, and here it is. This plagiarism exercise started out with this first page that had a list of admissions and types of plagiarism that students committed, college students, both undergrad and graduate students. And this survey came from someone who graduated from my alma mater. It was a survey of over 63,700 U.S. undergraduate students and 9,250 graduate students conducted over 3 years, and it revealed some interesting statistics. Some of the activities that occurred were paraphrasing or copying a few sentences from an internet source without footnoting it, paraphrasing or copying a few sentences from a written source without footnoting it, fabricating or falsifying a bibliography, copying material almost word for word from a written source without citing it, turning in work that was done by another student, and obtaining a paper from a paper mill, which means essentially you bought a paper. So you can imagine these are not good things, and nobody should be doing them. Or to create some tables, right? So one of your tables was going to look like this. So obviously this is what's called a T-chart, and well, maybe that's not so obvious, but this is called a T-chart, right? And it's a T-chart because it's like the shape of a T, right? And there are some things that your graph would need in order to make it easily understood. So the purpose of a graph really is to give somebody information at a quick view. It gives them an idea of all the stuff you're talking about, all this data, and they get to look at it in this interesting little picture form, and it makes some logical sense to them. So some of the things you're going to need on here are labels. We're going to need to know what this graph is all about. What is this chart all about? We're going to need to know what this column is for and what this column is for. And as you can see, if you looked at the data carefully, this data contained some an activity, the percentage, a measured percentage of that activity for the group of undergraduates, and a measure or percentage of activity of the same activity for graduate students. You needed to read this carefully because on the information for the graduate students, it says graduate students self-report doing the same. So in order to know what the activity was that they reported to have done, you would have had to have read the sentence before, right? Where it was talking about undergraduate students. And in this example, it says in the very first item, 36% undergraduate students admit to paraphrasing, copying a few sentences from the internet source without footnoting it. The next one is graduate students self-report doing the same, which would be paraphrasing or copying a few sentences from the internet source without footnoting it. So this was an exercise in reading carefully. And some of you had a hard time with it because you were not reading very carefully. That's the point. So once you completed the T-chart for one group, it would have looked something like this. And this student didn't put the label, it's kind of hidden. This label, this T-chart was for the graduate students. But anyway, she wrote the types of plagiarism, he or she, I don't know whose paper this is. And this column was the percentages, but we needed a label, should have had a label. So, and then this column they chose for the activity. However, they didn't read carefully. This person didn't read very carefully at all, and just wrote graduate student report doing the same. Well, we have no idea what the activity was. That was something that needed to be included, right? So we got to be careful. What I like about this person's work is that he or she decided to put the order of our activities according to what is the most egregious activity, the worst thing you could do in terms of plagiarism at the university level, which is, according to the data, purchasing a paper from the paper mill. So that was something that was really thoughtful. This person decided that he or she was going to put the order of the data according to what was the worst thing somebody could have done, right? And that assumption was made after the person thought about the information that was initially given. This is a really good example of what the complex graph would have looked like. This graph contains a label, and it's a graph that has the 3 columns in it. And in the first column is the activity that was committed, although it should say activity, right? The second column is the graduate students. The third column was the undergraduate students. And all of the information is really easy to see at one glance. That's the point of a graph. That's the beauty and the brilliance of a graph, is that it really helps you to look at a whole bunch of data all at one time and really get a good understanding of what it is. So this person was successful in making this complex graph, which contains all the information about graduate students, undergraduate students, and the type of plagiarism that was measured in the survey. So this was ultimately what you were to end up with at the end. Okay, so if you haven't completed this activity, please do so and turn it in on Saturday the 12th. Bye.